So this week was a festival of celebration. We were celebrating and promoting 21st century skills, and SQU has taken a huge step to endorse this with potentially, and this is why we have this Maharat. This whole week, Professor Morawetz has been introducing and demonstrating Maharat platform on Potentially, which is a career platform, the career readiness platform. So a little bit about our speaker. He is professor in entrepreneurship and digital innovation at Henley Business School at the University of Reading in the UK, where he leads world-class portfolio of modules, programs, and activities at the Henley Center for Entrepreneurship. He is program director for the highly innovative BSc entrepreneurship pathway, consistently described as transformational by both students and teachers in entrepreneurship and digital leadership at all levels. And for his excellence in entrepreneurship teaching, Professor Morawetz received the National Enterprise Educator of the Year award in the UK. As an academic innovator, Norbert has created a number of innovative learning software tools which have been adopted at over 150 colleges and universities, impacting hundreds of thousands of students a year. He is the founder of Potentially with a .ly, the skills wallet and skills development platform for students and young professionals. He also founded psychometric team analytics software called Team Match and social initiative Class of 2020, which supported young people through the COVID-19 pandemic. For this innovation in teaching and learning, Professor Morawetz received the award of National Teaching Fellow last year, the highest award for teaching and learning in the UK. Today's talk will provide a brief introduction to how entrepreneurship is embedded and taught at Henley Business School at the University of Reading, including how the discipline is evolving to meet new challenges in the business environment. The presentation will also highlight the challenges of academic entrepreneurship and discuss how universities can better incentivize and support research commercializations. So if you have any questions, it's okay, you can interrupt. Professor Morawetz is happy to answer any questions during his talk. So the floor is yours. Okay.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you very much for having me here. A great honor to talk to you about my favorite subject, which is entrepreneurship. So maybe I want to start off by giving you a bit of introduction to myself, but also to Henley Business School. As you can hear from my accent, I'm originally from Austria, not from a region not so far away where Arnold Schwarzenegger was also born. Unfortunately, I haven't turned out quite the same way as he. So, yeah, I've gone down the academic path. And I did move to the UK to do my PhD there, initially following a strong interest around the film industry. And so I did my PhD on film finance, film industry, and film policy. Then worked a bit in the film industry as well and in consultancy, advising, for example, the European Union on the media policy there. But then I got strongly pulled into what became eventually quite a widespread discipline, entrepreneurship, which really sort of coincided with also the tech boom and the digital startup boom. And I first started this as a lecturer at Hertfordshire Business School in the UK. And we really built up one of the largest entrepreneurship programs at the university at the time, which then also resulted in the university winning the Entrepreneurial University of the Year award, which was very great accolade for this university at the time. And I then joined Henley Business School, which is one of the oldest business schools in the UK, and have been with Henley ever since, and have sort of like followed a relatively unusual path for an academic, in that I focused strongly on teaching pedagogy, but also on some practical innovations in the business school and trying to promote innovation across the higher education sector. And I'll say a bit more about a couple of the projects that have been mentioned as well. But let me also introduce you to Henley Business School. So Henley Business School is in Henley-on-Thames in the UK. about 50 minutes outside of London. It's really one of the most beautiful parts of the UK. It's got these rolling green hills as the Thames sort of like meanders through those hills. And on this River Thames is the old Henley Management College, this beautiful white building, which was one of the first places in the UK where management was taught. About 15 years ago, Henley Business School became part of the University of Reading and has been part of the University of Reading ever since. It's a triple accredited business school. It's renowned for its MBA program and is now also the largest provider of what's called the Senior Leader Apprenticeship. But don't be misled by the term apprenticeship here. This is really to do with executive MBA programs and flexible MBA programs. It's ranked very highly for a number of areas. One of the areas where it's particularly strong is also executive education and custom programs, working with corporates on creating bespoke leadership programs for them. Overall, we've got about 7,000 students in the business school from about 100 countries, so it's a very international business school. And it's also got a very strong alumni network. That's quite a high value alumni network also because Henley is particularly strong in postgraduate education, and so we've got a lot of alumni from MBAs, EMBAs that are in leading positions in companies out there. And there are a number of centers of excellence at the university. For example, the ICMA Financial Center, the Center for Coaching is leading in Europe. Real estate and finance is ranked number 2 in the UK. And one of the other great centers is also the Henley Center for Entrepreneurship that I'll talk to you in a second. Henley also operates partner universities in other countries. And the biggest one of those would be Henley, South Africa, which is now the #1 business school in South Africa and a phenomenal success story. Within the Henley Business School, we have also got something called the Henley Center for Entrepreneurship that was started by Professor Andrew Godley about 20 years ago, who has left the university last year as well. And we have been awarded also a top 20 Global Entrepreneurship Center by ASCP about 5 years ago. And that's owing to the strength of the research, but also the strength of the teaching portfolio that's going on there. So it's a research center, but there's a very strong teaching element to it as well, and some mentoring of startups and scale-ups outside the university as well, and we're looking to increase that. One of the things that Henley Business School also offers is its own investor network called Henley Business Angels, which I am now also co-directing with a colleague, and I'll say about this a bit more as well. And based on this investor network, we've also grown an investor network across other universities in the UK, specifically for enhancing research commercialization in social sciences, humanities, and arts, because that's an area that typically does not receive a lot of attention, and I'll come back to that again a bit later. And finally, sort of like Henley Business School as a business school is part of the University of Reading, which has about 26,000 students, is located in Reading, and Reading is, if you don't know it, sort of about 25 minutes outside of London. It's close to Heathrow Airport, and it's a town, because it's close to Heathrow Airport, it's a very dynamic town, because when sort of the first American companies came over to the UK to locate their headquarters in the UK for the rest of Europe, they came out of Heathrow and sort of looked at what's the closest town there, and it was Reading. So we have got the headquarters of Microsoft, Huawei, Oracle, and so on in Reading, which makes it quite a dynamic a business center. And it has also got a very flourishing software publishing and software industry around it. And the region overall is the Thames Valley region, and we've also looked at this as a whole entrepreneurial ecosystem in a couple of papers. The University of Reading itself maybe has its research excellence particularly in a number of areas. Agriculture, it's one of the leading research centers in this area. Meteorology is very strong at the university. I don't know if you recognize this graphic. It's basically the climate change stripes that were developed at the university as well, came out of a research which has been adopted by the United Nations to also show the risks of climate change here. And food sciences is another center of excellence at the university. Okay, so that gives you a bit of background of Henley Business School and University of Reading. And I want to talk to you in this first part a bit about entrepreneurship and digital innovation in terms of like where I've come from in terms of developing learning technologies. Then look at how we apply some of this at Henley. And then I want to look specifically also at a topic that I'm interested very much at the moment, which is how we can get more academics to go down the research commercialization path, how we can get more spin-outs, how we can increase capacity in the system for universities to deliver on research impact. So that's what I'm mostly focused on at the moment. But I want to take you to start with back at the beginning of where I started, and that was really as a lecturer at Hertfordshire Business School, and I was given the slightly impossible task of creating an entrepreneurship module for over 1,200 students that would all be taught together. Now, if you know how entrepreneurship teaching typically works, this is something that is very practice-oriented and typically is taught in small groups. So if you're sort of give me the task to run a class for 1,200 students thereabouts, that means you have to create about 40 different seminars, coordinate a team of maybe 20 people delivering those, and within those you have across this you have about 60 or in terms of student teams. Typically, if it's a group project, you want them to be in teams of 4 or 5. So that means you have to create a good 200 teams, 250 teams in this class. And because this was a cross-campus endeavor, I really thought the only way I can make this work is if I start to use technology and I find a way to make those teams work. Because maybe some of the teachers in the room as well know that sometimes when students, they work on group projects, they are not too happy. Maybe they complain that somebody is contributing less than somebody else. And so the question was, how can we make this work? And so I went into technology, and we developed this first piece of software called Team Match, which was using a psychometric test to figure out where students have got personal strengths, but also what kind of collaboration style they have. And then we used an algorithm to basically match them into teams and created the teams in this way. And this was really successful. It did increase the efficacy of the team projects, but also it really, one of the remits of this module was that the university wanted to create better networks between students across different disciplines, so to increase the interdisciplinary nature of networks going on at the university. And it was highly effective in this regard because the number of students that increased their personal networks across the university, made new friends from other disciplines, was phenomenal. And this tool then also spread to a number of other institutions, disseminated through conferences, and had quite wide adoption. From there, it went down a bit more into the psychometrics route, and we developed something called the PI indicator. I don't know how much you know about psychometric testing. Most psychometric tests are developed to assess graduates, to assess leaders, and to do some form of assessment. From an educational perspective, this is, we're sitting at the other end. We're typically trying to develop students and prepare them so that they can shine at those assessments when they get hired. And so we turned this assessment logic on its head, and we developed a PI indicator specifically with a view to be a development tool for students. And again, this has been used with over, I think, 75 students now actually, and been disseminated across a number of institutions. And those sort of were the origins then of what eventually became potentially as a skills development platform that I co-founded with my colleague Trevor, who's also here with us this week, and our CTO Abdul on here. One of the last, one of the final projects here to mention quickly was that initially this also ran as a social enterprise, and specifically during the pandemic, we received national press in the UK as well, and mentionings in the BBC, in the Guardian, CTM, Microsoft Network, and so on. And we used the original potentially platform as a free platform and reached out to corporates at the time, because I very vividly remember being in the classroom teaching my students, some of the students that we have been teaching for 3 years. The pandemic hit, we had to send them home, and they were looking at the most bleak job market in a generation, with lots of graduate employers also saying, we're not hiring, we're canceling our graduate schemes. And so what we did then was to reach out to all of those big employers and basically said, you've already created the training materials for these graduate programs, you're not hiring, give us the learning materials, give us the programs, we'll put it on the platform. And we recruited about 55 volunteers, many of professionals that were furloughed and not at work, to teach these things. People never met in person, all coordinated online. And we delivered classes in digital skills with these learning materials, upskilled about 1,300 young people and helped them get into jobs. And so it was a very good initiative that received a lot of positive feedback and helped young people at a critical time here. So those are a couple of these of projects, and I'm mentioning them up front because they are important in the way how I've also tried to infuse this into my academic practice and building up the teaching program at Henley. So when I joined Henley, it had a very limited program in entrepreneurship teaching, and we really had to build up this stuff from the ground. So at the moment at Henley, we are covering the full range of entrepreneurship, and that means a dedicated undergraduate study in the business school, a master's in entrepreneurship, and of course, university-wide modules as well. And I'm going to pick out a couple of those modules here in a second. So there are some first-year modules, although recently we've changed this to something which is called Entrepreneurship Vibes, which is a very large entrepreneurship event that runs across first years, a small business competition. The things that I've highlighted here in yellow are really a track of modules that run in the business school for business school students. And I'm going to say a few more words about those because I think there's some innovation here in terms of how we've built those modules to stack on top of each other as well. And then third-year modules and so on. So this is not a full list of our modules. It's actually double of that, but this gives you a bit of an idea of the breadth and spread of this here. So maybe the first module that I want to pick out, I'm not going to spend too much on this. We could talk about each of those quite at length, but I don't want to do that. Just want to give you a quick, brief introduction to some of those modules. So this module called Create Your Business or Start Your Business is a new module that runs, it's basically an entrepreneurship module that runs all year round. So it runs in semester A and it runs in semester B. It's open to all students who are non-business school students. And it gives every student, it's on the options for every student at the university, gives every student, regardless where they are in their degree, an opportunity to come and take an entrepreneurship module. And this is an ideas-based module, so traditional entrepreneurship module in terms of creating a business idea, testing the business idea with lean startup principles, going through an ideation period, and the purpose of this module is really to develop entrepreneurial mindset. And so it goes along with a series of exercises that are really specifically focused on trying to increase opportunity awareness, creative problem solving, experimentation skills in students. Some of those, we're not expecting that brilliant business ideas come out of it, but we're really expecting that every student acquires those entrepreneurial mindset skills and develops it forward. It is connected also to our IdeaFest business plan competition, but the key focus of this module is to offer everyone at the University of Reading the opportunity to take this module and to develop this entrepreneurial mindset. A version of this module exists specifically for business school students, but there the expectations are higher, because there we would expect that the students have stronger financial skills, so we ask more of them in terms of business planning, in terms of financial planning, in terms of testing. So if I look at the business school track, they will be having some introductions to entrepreneurship. They will take an ideas module, but then observing also a bit what's out there in the landscape. Very often we stop with entrepreneurship at, you've created a great business idea, thank you very much, and now we leave the student or the graduate at that point. So here we've created a module which is called Founder Dilemmas, which picks up really at when things become difficult, which is when you actually start a business, when you have to deal with co-founders, when you maybe have to raise finance, when you have to deal with investors, when you have to make decisions that have a cumulative impact on your company down the line, 1 year, 2 years later. And we take them through a series of experiences simulating each of those critical decisions in the company. So we have a co-founder game that simulates the team building process. We've got an investor role play we've put together. It's called Term Sheet Shootout, where they have to negotiate very hard with investors on this, and we take them through this process. But one of the other things that this module is also doing is it gets students to think bigger. Because one of the key things that I've also experienced with students and student ventures is that when students create ventures, they tend to create ventures for the group that they know best, which is other students. But we would like them to create more valuable, more impactful ventures. So explaining to them a bit in terms of like how to think bigger, how the venture landscape works around this, and how expert entrepreneurs address this topic is really essential for this, to get them to create more valuable ventures. And so bigger ideas come out of this, and we've built a whole process around this. In the final year on these entrepreneurship pathways, students have got the option to take this module called Applied Entrepreneurship. This used to be 100 credit, but it's now an 80 credit module. What does that mean? It means that students basically in their final year will be running a business more or less full time. They will be spending the majority of their time building an actual business. So they set up a limited company, they make sales, they build an actual product, they hire people. That's part of the third year module. So they leave their degree as the CEO, as the founder of an actual business. It's a small number of students that are on this module. This year, for example, we've got 9 students, but it also because we give them a lot of support in doing this. And this is one of the modules now that regularly generate student startups for the University of Reading. Previously, we didn't have that. It's really put this into place now. And with this program, I've tried to build networks across the university so that various different departments support it. We've got the media and PR department supporting the students. We're giving them, we've built up a small fund that they can access, and we've also had some alumni donations to help those students build these businesses. And how this works in terms of the actual academics and assessment is that every 2 weeks, we work with the students, every 2 weeks they have to give a progress presentation on what they have achieved, what they're planning for the next 2 weeks, and what they're struggling with. And so we've got more or less mini assessments every 2 weeks, and at the end of the term we've got boardroom presentations where they have to come and present what they have developed to not just to academic staff, but also to externals that we invite. And so this creates a quite virtuous loop of the students being able to run their business, earn academic credit for it, but we continuously support them and push them forward so that they go and build this business. And it's a phenomenal experience for the students. Most of the students on these modules do phenomenally well, and either they continue to run their business afterwards or they're snapped up in the job market. And so in any entrepreneurship teaching, we always have this thing of what to focus on. And so as a center, we do both. We do entrepreneurship as mindset, which is to develop entrepreneurial graduates, but we also try to do something really good on entrepreneurship as a business practice, which would create graduate entrepreneurs. So both of those things. And of course, the value of entrepreneurship is not just in those graduate entrepreneurs, but it is a mindset that is relevant for all students, and that means trying to create students that are great at creative problem solving. And I don't know what your experience is here at SQU. Certainly, I can say for the students that we've seen over the last 2-3 years, the pandemic has had a big impact on the students, especially in this respect. They have had less opportunity maybe to practice these skills, so it's really highly important. The second kind of like thing, and this is kind of like the ultimate outcome of any entrepreneurship program that we run, is that we want to give the students the ability to identify opportunities, and if they see a good opportunity for themselves, to also feel they have the skills and the confidence to back themselves in opportunities, so that they go and pursue this opportunity and make something out of this. And when we talk about opportunity here, yes, to some degree, entrepreneurship is about maybe self-enablement, but it's also always about creating something of value. And value here is really about creating value for others. And so entrepreneurship as a discipline, as a mindset, is also about being useful and creating something useful for others and for society. And that's why it's also very strongly aligned with citizenship building in this area. And then finally, on the business school modules, but also on these ideas modules, it's also about teaching the students the scientific method in a more raw way, because they have to run small business experiments that they're testing with real people, and it gets them to encourages them to go out of their shell, out of their comfort zone, and speak and approach other people and experiment a bit. And those are skills that are really important, especially in a university context where often we focus too much on the academics and less on real world skills. We've done some analysis as well in terms of like what the impact of our teaching is. So in the UK, we regularly run graduate outcome surveys where 18 months after leaving the university, students have to report back in what job they are and what they're doing. And this runs across all of the UK and is collected by every university for themselves. And so we've run an analysis on what students have taken some of our modules, and we had this phenomenal finding that if they've taken one of our modules, they had a 50% higher likelihood of starting the business down the line. Okay, so that's a bit in terms of like what we're doing in entrepreneurship, but this world isn't standing still. Like any other discipline, it's also moving ahead. And so we're constantly also looking at what do we have to change and how do we have to adopt this portfolio. And so here, maybe one of the big differences also is that when I sort of started, entrepreneurship was very much a novelty. It was just coming into universities. These days, being an entrepreneur is quite popular. We have them in the news every day. Every day we've got Elon Musk coming up with something new, and so on. And a lot of students might be inspired by this. They might already have some light entrepreneurship class when they are at school. They look at videos online. So in this sense, entrepreneurship is less of a novelty to them anymore, and they have got higher expectations. So the level of what they need to deliver, or receive in the classroom, is a bit higher. Traditionally, we have focused on just letting the students develop any kind of idea, and there's always this question of how wild can they go. So one school of entrepreneurship would say we should encourage students to create realistic ideas that they can do here today where they are. Another school of thought would be to encourage them to maybe go down the moonshot idea school, so to create big ideas, to create ideas that could have a big impact, to maybe look at deep tech ventures. And so when we design those programs, we really have to balance in between those two things. So the practical, realistic but also the more imaginative and visionary, and also support that. A question that I'm quite concerned sometimes also is in terms of like how much we encourage the students and how much responsibility we have for our student entrepreneurs. Not all of students, but some of the students will get very passionate about the idea and about their business, and they will work day and night pursuing the business. And so as an entrepreneurship teacher, you also have a responsibility to make sure that they don't exhaust themselves and that they stay mentally healthy. And it's a different kind of responsibility that maybe you have when you teach accounting or finance and the students leave after class, because here sometimes students can get very, very passionate about their projects, and it's their baby that they're creating, and if it fails, then it has a big impact on them as well. So there needs to be a layer of extra care that goes into entrepreneurship teaching to make sure that we look after our students. One of the things that I'm also quite I think a fair bit about is when we look at statistics, then about 80% of the unicorn billion-dollar startups or the most successful startups are founded by teams and not necessarily by people who have got the same discipline, so not two computer science students or two business students, but students that come from a mix of things. Oh, thank you. Thanks. So increasingly, I'm also thinking in terms of like what more can we do to create viable co-founder teams, and how can we mix those students up so that they create those impactful co-founder teams, because the age of the solo entrepreneur is going. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes it also is the case that maybe the university is actually not the right place for a student or student venture or graduate venture to continue. And that might be the university, or it might be the University of Reading, and maybe they have to go somewhere else. And so there's a discussion that also needs to be had in terms of like looking after the students to make sure the best decision is taken for them and for their venture to make sure it can flourish. And then, of course, like the question is always, is it still a good time for entrepreneurship? So if we look at, if we take a quick look at this chart, this looks at the rise and fall of what's called the consumer startup. And so again, if I go back to the beginning of my career in terms of teaching entrepreneurship, any student with a brilliant app idea effectively could come up with an app idea, maybe get one developer and create an app, and there was some likelihood that it could be the next millionaire. But this age is kind of like over now. So we can see that consumer startups in the US have died a bit. And these days, entrepreneurship is not as easy anymore. So it's not a matter of coming up with a new food bar, snack bar with a new drink, and so on. There is already a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of technology already out there. So it's not a matter of just coming up with an idea anymore. These days, the barrier to entry into entrepreneurship has moved a bit more towards the deep tech end of things, towards co-founded ventures. And as universities on the whole, we're not particularly great at creating this kind of ventures and creating the factor conditions for these ventures to emerge. So if you want to see the next wave of entrepreneurship, we need to raise the bar and create the environment so that we can really do this. At the same time, there's also other opportunities. So at Henley, there's been a big research going on into what's called the side hustle economy. Maybe a little bit specific to the UK, but we also see this in the US. Lots of people working as an employee in a corporate job, and then they've got some sort of side hustle where they sell something on the internet. Maybe they're an Uber driver in addition to this. Maybe they run a small consultancy on the side. And so we've got this whole range of people that previously used to be employees, but now they are, to some degree, quite enlightened freelancers that run a business very close to being entrepreneurs and very entrepreneurial. And so this creates a new market in terms of making sure we can maybe also offer some training and teaching for those freelancers, side hustle entrepreneurs, but also it creates some problems for corporates and organizations to help them understand how they can deal with their employees who behave in this way. And is this a behavior that they should encourage or not? How can they leverage that inside their own organization as well? So maybe how can they encourage entrepreneurship as well? It's very widespread in the UK, so it is a big topic around this. And so on this chart, I was trying to sort of like show a bit what are the different constituencies and stakeholders that we look after at the university. And so maybe in the past, traditionally, we're focused more on the undergraduate students, on the postgraduate students. And those would have very limited work experience, so that's the left side over here. And the focus was more on building the mindset, so they would benefit from that. On the other side of the spectrum, we've got people who have got work experience, maybe some entrepreneurial experience, and one specialist knowledge. And so here we've got the freelancers now. We've also got the corporates to some degree. And I've put academic researchers and academic entrepreneurs on there twice because they really also represent a big constituency that we need to look after, either exposing more of our academic colleagues to entrepreneurial mindset, so to raise and maybe change their thinking a bit, but also there will be some of those who need help with spin-out processes and building something, and those have different requirements around business skills. And I'll follow on and talk a little bit more about this in a second. One of the immediate things that we've done also is engage a bit more with our corporate network to see what they want to do. And so one of the programs we've created here is a program with the consultancy Accenture, a very big consultancy here. And we're running an accelerator program for them that they've created specifically for business owners from diverse backgrounds, minority-owned backgrounds, where they, in their ecosystem of other large corporates, have set aside about $50 billion in this space to give preference to suppliers from founders that are from an ethnic minority in the UK or in the US. And we take those small businesses, we run them through a tech accelerator program and get them ready to pitch their services and sell into Accenture. And that's a program we've developed over the last year and run with them, and it's very successful as well. This is maybe one of the other things that I should have highlighted in our module portfolio, and that is Henley is one of the very few business schools that offers a sales and business development module for undergraduates. Because selling and business development is essential in entrepreneurship, but if you go into most business schools, it's completely absent from the curriculum. It does not exist. You will learn about corporate strategy, you will learn about how to run the accounting for a global multinational company, but it will not, typically business schools will not teach you how to do the sales process, how to do the business development process, although this has become very sophisticated, especially with digital technology. So we've got a particular expertise that we've built up in this area as well, and it really shines in these corporate accelerator programs because most organizations, they want to grow, and that means business development. For our SME community around the university in our region, we've created this business angel network. Most of you might be familiar with Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, this kind of like TV shows where wealthy individuals invest money into companies. In the UK, the government has created a tax benefit for investors who want to invest into new companies, which makes it very attractive for individuals to invest in these companies, and this is how most of the early stage companies in the UK are financed. It's a very successful policy that has also been copied now in France and various other European countries, and basically it reimburses the investor for the risk that they're taking in investing in new companies. As a consequence of that, there's been a creation of business angel networks where investors interested in investing in these companies come together. And as a university, we organize such a network. We invite companies to present once a quarter to this investor community. They present their company, and then we facilitate and help them to raise investment from this community. This is called Henley Business Angels. Was started about 7 years ago by my colleague, Jurek Sikorsky. And I've taken this over now with another colleague in terms of growing this and making sure we can grow this, not just in the Thames Valley region, but also introducing this concept to other universities through a secondary network. And that kind of like brings me to this, this final part of this presentation, which is to look at what's happening on the academic and the researcher side of things. So how can we increase the engagement with the topic? And overall, at the moment, the engagement from researchers and academics with research commercialization, with entrepreneurship, tends to be quite low across the board. My colleagues friends in the technology transfer office, they sometimes refer to the recalcitrant academic, so they basically a person that does not, is very uncollaborative and uncooperative, and they just can't get them to engage with the technology transfer office. Which is a shame, because those are all really nice people. They are ready there to help, but they just can't get enough people in to make it work. So I guess the question is, why is that the case? Does it matter? And is there anything we can do about it? Or should we just leave it as well? From a European perspective, there is a broader question that also hangs about this with regards to the economy. So on this graph, we can see the global share of research and development of Europe. And it's been declining year on year, although more and more investment goes into things like technology transfer offices. And here at the bottom, you can sort of see the rise of China going along the same way. But you don't see, for example, a decline of the US. You see a continuous rise of the US economy here as well. And arguably, if you look at the differences between those economies, the US has got a very strong economy that keeps growing because somehow they managed to get this R&D, this innovation piece right. And I can't really emphasize this as well in terms of like what's happening here as well in terms of like how much expenditure goes into these areas in terms of government funding and so on. And so we can see here also what is the rate of R&D funding based on GDP. And again, we're kind of like outcompeted here by the US. But is it all state funding? And actually, if you looked at into what goes into the R&D expenditure, then if we look at the R&D expenditure and funding for it, then Europe actually has more state funding than the US. So European universities, UK universities receive more money from the government for R&D than US universities. So where does the difference come from? It comes from the private innovation and R&D that's completed by private companies in the UK. And what's the missing piece in there? It's how the universities work with the private sector on leveraging the state-funded R&D. That's a key difference in there. And so I guess like from an academic perspective, and as an individual academic, typically you're not particularly concerned with this because most of us, if we are in a university, we have a relatively good life. Hopefully, we've got a decent quality of life. We do the stuff that we like, our research, we go to conferences, talk to people of our tribe in our discipline, we present our papers, we do the research, and it carries on. From a policy perspective, there's funding for technology transfer offices. We create those, we create accelerator programs, we create innovation centers, and the places are beautiful, and does it really matter? Well, it does matter if we fall behind other places in the world. And it does matter for the economic output, and it does ultimately matter for the wealth, but also the happiness of the citizens. And a lot of universities and countries have modeled themselves on the US model. So we have got the famous triple helix model. We've got people who study MIT, study Stanford, and they try to copy what they are doing and try to bring it to their own university. And typically what they bring over and what they copy is the technology transfer office and the support around that. But then those technology transfer offices and innovation centers, they still sit idle, and people are wondering, why is that the case? Why are the academics still not engaging? Why are those innovation centers not bustling with new companies and creating billion-dollar companies? Why is that not happening? Despite all the effort, the centers are built, the infrastructure is there, the people are there, and so on. Why is it not happening? Why are the academics saying it's not for them? And within Europe, especially in the UK has done more than anyone else in this area. It's invested more than anyone else. It outperforms Europe by a fair bit, but still it's nowhere near the US. And in the UK, every university has to participate in something called the Knowledge Exchange Framework. So they have to report on the number of startups they create, spin-outs they create, student and staff. They have to report on what they're doing in research commercialization. They're given metrics on this. There's been a review on investment and so on. So there's a lot of support gone in, but still the needle hasn't really changed. And so when I started to look at this topic a bit more, also on my own experience a bit, I felt like this is really obvious in terms of like why most people don't engage. But first of all, they don't have any time, right? As an academic, you're always overloaded, so you don't have any time. But then also, if you look at the career pathways or the career capital that academics can take out of research commercialization, it's very low. It's not something that typically springs to mind where there are role models or career paths going on. So as a point of departure, we're looking at this topic very much from the viewpoint of the academic. What can we do to incentivize the academic in this? How do we have to change university institutional policy, but maybe also national policy to make sure more people can engage in this. And the first project that we've run over the last year is called the Academic Promotions Pathways Linked to Entrepreneurship project called Apple. And it was in a first research group, we focused specifically again on what's called SHAPE disciplines, so social sciences, humanities, arts for people and economy, which is SHAPE, is a new term launched by the British Academy to go alongside STEM, sort of science, technology, engineering, and maths. So the others are now grouped under SHAPE on here. And so we've interviewed senior stakeholders in universities on this. We've run a survey. We've analyzed job adverts, and also we've analyzed the promotion criteria at universities around this area of entrepreneurship and so on. And so here are just some highlight findings from this. And the first thing that we found was that most academics actually think, even in this social sciences, humanities, and the arts, which are not the areas you look first for spin-outs. Even there, quite a few were saying that they think actually the stuff that they could do could be turned into a business, a consultancy, a social enterprise, and so on. So about 46% said actually the stuff that they're doing could be turned into a business. The flip side of that also, if we ask them how often do you think about starting a business or doing something, close to 60 said never. Right? So they were like, oh, no, never. Okay. If you ask them what matters for them in terms of career advancement, because academics also just want a career at the end of the day, then yeah, publications matter and is important. Commercialization absolutely does not matter. So 0.8 thought it's very important. It's not a factor here. If you did a startup, a spin-out, if you do licensing, is this a route for promotion at your institution? For nearly 85% said no. Right? So this is not a clear path for them. If they engage in this, they actually cannot make this work for them as a career. And very few people across the UK, this was mostly professorial level, thought that this was a good idea to invest the time in if they want to advance their career. And we also asked quite a provocative question. That was, do you think research commercialization is a career dead end? And 10% kind of like right away said yes, it's a career dead end. And about 40% said neutral. But neutral in this respect is really like, yeah, kind of agree. It's not something that you want to do. If you look a little bit on the awareness, on the training side here as well, then this was to some degree quite shocking. At professorial level and so on, very few of the academics that are in high positions today have received any training. Here, of course, when they did their doctoral training around research commercialization, almost completely absent. Only 2% said they had something. But also in their current role, very few people, less than 20%, have had any training around this. And so, yeah, there's no skills and no awareness out there in these areas, even on the established researchers. And so if we look at sort of like the top barriers of engagement here, then first and foremost at all, they don't have the time. Because they don't have the time, they cannot be bothered to engage with another thing that maybe adds a lot of bureaucracy to their life. But yes, also they lack the business skills, and because it takes time away from the research and they cannot make it count towards their career, why should they really engage in this? And also asking senior stakeholders, pro-vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors who sit on promotion committees, are they looking after this? Are they giving people a promotion based on this? They were also quite clear when it comes to the crunch, the publications are the things that matter. Maybe occasionally they will consider what else is going on. And yeah, but really the other stuff is much more important because it can be easily benchmarked. We can have journals in 3-star, 4-star journals, so we can benchmark those. We can benchmark the impact ratio. For those people who did run some businesses, they mostly treated this as a side hustle or as a hobby because also there was no professional support in this area and they had no idea what it looks like to really be an entrepreneur versus everybody knows what it means to be a good academic. Yeah, it's something that they did on the weekend. Overall, in the UK, most universities have got at least 2 paths for promotion pathways. So they will have an teaching and research pathway to be promoted on. Some universities also have a teaching intensive pathway that you can be promoted on. A very small number has got a research intensive pathway as well. Over the last 10 years, a number of universities have also started to institute an enterprise pathway, so a third pathway, and about a third of institutions have created an enterprise pathway. But it's very nebulous, it's not very defined, it's not very accepted, and it does not constitute a labor market, because if you get promoted at one institution, it's not sure you can switch and move to another university. And so, again, asking the academics, well, would you be interested in this? Would you be interested in doing something if you had the support? Then quite a significant number actually would be if they could overcome the other barriers. So, and things that were interesting for them, for example, was the opportunity maybe to take an enterprise sabbatical where they could work a semester on a spin-off. They are also interested in training if there is some certification that goes for them, in there that can help them, is recognized by the institution. Awards, innovator awards, entrepreneurship awards, yes, that's seen as positive. And about a third of them also thought that if it was available, if it was recognized, they would consider pursuing an enterprise pathway. So it's not that the academics are helpless academics sitting in their ivory towers. They do have the skills, they're smart people, they could learn this, they would like to do it, or some of them, but why should they do it? And so, sort of like summing this up a bit, at the moment, currently, across the board, if we look at research commercialization, it does not create what's called career capital, typically for the people pursuing it. It's limited, you find it very limited in promotion criteria. It's typically not included in the UK in annual workload planning, so giving people time for it is very difficult. It might be difficult for you to find a job at another university if you engage on this. It might not be, if you go and start a company out of your PhD, it might not give you your first academic job afterwards, so it stops your academic career. And very often it also makes you suspicious in the eyes of your colleague who are like, oh, what is this guy doing? He should be just doing publication. So to some degree, this is also a systemic problem that needs to be addressed on national level. So what can we do? What are sort of like the key levers that we can pull to maybe increase this? It comes down to sort of like picked two out. So the first one would be maybe aligning the individual motivations, incentives for academics a bit closer with the topic. And the second is we need more capacity in the system that allows academics to engage, because sort of they're addressing the time problem. And so very briefly, what are sort of solutions that we've also that we look at in terms of what can we do to increase the engagement? Well, the low-hanging fruit is embedding this in doctoral programs, in doctoral schools, to give young researchers exposure to the topic and give them some awareness and some training in this area. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit in here. Looking at the promotion criteria at the university and making sure that people who do this have a way of still advancing their career is another actually quite low-hanging fruit, something that every institution can look at and make a change at. We've been looking at the possibility of creating maybe a spin-out journal where people who are engaging in this activity can report the activity and get the equivalent of a 3-star or 4-star journal article by running the business. So seeing how we can maybe create academic credit for academics engaging in this, but it's a bigger effort here. Building research culture or culture around this at the university is important, and that could be as simple as in not just most universities will run research seminars once a week, a couple of weeks in a term, so sometimes maybe also inviting people who have done a spin-out to present to others, so just as a group of professionals we get more familiar again with the concept. And then the other thing is around probably offering something like an enterprise sabbatical or some flexible workload around it. So those are things that can be done by institutions relatively by themselves to increase the alignment of individual academic motivations with this agenda. If there is no alignment, it's very difficult for people to engage. And then maybe sort of the last topic to look at is how we can increase the engagement in here. And here we kind of like need to look at this like a zero-sum game. I would say it's like a zero-sum game, really. Because as an academic, you only have got X amount of hours a week that you need to spend on things which typically are research and teaching. So if you also are going to do some sort of research commercialization, spin-out, licensing, consulting, and so on, then where is the time going to come from? If you do this, you have to give up something else. So how can we increase the amount of time that academics have in there? And here, I think the greatest potential that we've missed so far in terms of copying the US model is not necessarily bringing in the innovation center, bringing in the technology transfer office, but what they do at the top institutions in the US very well is how they embed their postgraduate and or doctoral students in this process. And we know that only about a third of students typically will end up with the doctorate degree in staying in academic path, and 2/3 will typically leave and work elsewhere, not in a university. They won't pursue an academic path. And so we've got a group of people there who's very interested in research, but might not find a role in a university. In the US, this group of people are drawn much more into the startup and spin-out processes, working with their professors on starting companies. This is not happening elsewhere, but it's such an obvious opportunity, because here's a group of people who have got subject expertise, who might not go down the academic path. They could be used towards it. A second group of untapped potential that's on most university campuses are the business schools, the business school programs. Again, we're talking earlier, I was saying a bit worried about our students maybe creating just businesses for each other, consumer startups and so on, and not very robust businesses. At Henley, for example, we've got very excellent undergraduates, but we also have got great postgraduate students, MBAs, and so on. But still, the businesses that they come up with are not phenomenal. And why? Because typically they're business school students. They wouldn't have a big technical expertise in any particular area. But if only we could give them some of the intellectual property that's languishing in the university, in other departments, in other sciences, hard sciences department, where a researcher has developed something, but they don't have the business skills and the time to commercialize something. Here is a group of students who has the business skills and who want to create startups. So if you survey this group of students, they want to start businesses, but they don't have access to the intellectual property to do that. So could there be a way of bringing those together? And so here, what we're experimenting at the moment is to create a program which we call the SUPER program, the Spin-Up Accelerator program, where we're working with, at the moment, working with our legal team at the university to enable researchers to give and license the IP into startup or spin-up teams at the university. So where we bring together postdoctoral students and business school students to work with a researcher on creating a venture. And that means that the researcher who has created something, they can stay a leading researcher, but they can work with students maybe that they've trained, that they've trust. They can bring in business school students, mature students that they can trust, and they form a venture together, and they take it forward. And that's sort of the program we're building here at the moment, really with a view to create deep tech ventures, because otherwise we can't get there. And if we look at the statistics for the UK, at the moment in the UK, across the UK, every year there's about 150 staff startups formed. It's not particularly a lot, given that there are over 150 universities in the UK. But there are close to 5,000 student ventures being formed. And most of those student ventures are not particularly brilliant student ventures. So even if we can bring those two groups together, if we can just take a small portion of that group of students who are full of entrepreneurial energy and have got business skills and the relevant scientific and technical skills, and the researchers, then I think we can make a dent in these figures and create some very promising deep tech ventures, and that's sort of where we are at the moment on this. So that's the end of my presentation in terms of giving you an overview of what's going on in entrepreneurship, not only at Henley Business School, but also in the UK. Some of my own experiences as an academic entrepreneur, but also a researcher and teacher in this area, and how we're trying to bring all of this area together to create a change, not just at institution, but also maybe a change for the economy in harvesting the powers of entrepreneurship. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. Topic. Well, if we take all of these, where to start as an academic institution?
Yeah, sorry.
Where to start?
Where to start? I think SQ has got some programs already, but you can build it. You don't need to build everything all at once. You start from various sides. You start on the student side, but also start on the academic side. You seed it, and yeah. All of this is entirely possible to build, and very rapidly.
Yeah. In terms of resources, what are the percentage of the university budget injecting into the entrepreneurship program?
So Again, and I don't know in terms of like what the finances, how the finances work here in Oman. In the UK, for the entrepreneurship program became on the student side became self-funding relatively quickly. So the student recruitment has been very good on there. There is an internal transfer pricing at the university as well for students taking entrepreneurship modules. So my head of department is always very happy when she meets me, because we bring in lots of students from the rest of the university into the business school as well, which generates extra income from the rest of the university into the business school. The corporate programs, again, this is leveraging, I think you have got a continuing education program and executive program here already, which already has links with the business community that can be leveraged. And on the academic side, yeah, it's finding and championing the people who are already doing something, but then, yeah, having the passion of just going across and building those programs. All of those things are relatively, I find them quite obvious. These are obvious things that can be done. It's like a puzzle piece that fits neatly together. It's just that maybe there are the people missing to put the puzzle together. Yeah.
When I heard you talking about your program at Henley, the center, and it sounds to me that the university is adapting entrepreneurial model of a university, and that is good.
Yes.
Also, you talked about applied entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Okay. What type of labs and facilities you have in that regard?
So I mean, I'm almost ashamed to say that we run this almost outside of we've almost run this outside of the lab. So the Henley Center for Entrepreneurship, to some degree, has operated quite independent within the university as well. And it really was a bunch of academics. So my former head of department, Professor Andrew Godley, who started the center, was a very visionary person here. So he brought together a group of people, including me, relatively early on, who were very passionate about the topic. And so initially we've grown the whole thing with very limited support and buy-in from the university, but we just went out and did it. So we didn't necessarily wait until we've convinced the university. We've put papers, strategic papers together for the university. Then you wait until the committee meets, the committee deliberates, and nothing happens. So at some point, I think we just went ahead and did it. We put the modules together, we put it out, it recruited the students. We put a lot of these initiatives that I've presented here today are effectively us just going and doing it without necessarily getting a top, something down from the top. Once we've established something, for example, the applied entrepreneurship, once this has been running for 2 years, then the alumni community or the person running alumni management was like, oh, this is great. Actually, people would like to support this. And so they put we were able to get a fund to support the students. If we had that from the start, would have been fantastic. It's a constant battle in terms of securing these resources, but it comes down to staff initiative, I would say.
And my final question, at the moment we are revising our promotion criteria.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have mentioned one of them is putting the entrepreneurship aspects into
Yes.
the promotion. Can you share with us your promotion guidelines? Tell us a little bit with that part.
So we've analyzed promotion criteria about 80 universities in detail. So gone through them, mapped what the criteria are in there, and then we've done a bit of qualitative and quantitative analysis across that. So very happy to maybe share some of this in detail also with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
مرتضى.
All right. So I'm a member of an entrepreneurship committee, enhancement committee here at SKU, and our main concern is to help develop plans that promote entrepreneurship in our teaching curricula, research, and training for students. And here comes my question. Some people believe that, including myself sometimes, believe that the concept entrepreneurship can be incorporated in specific fields, colleges and majors, whereas it cannot be, or it might not work in other fields without mentioning those fields. To what extent do you agree with this?
So I think entrepreneurship is valuable for all students, really, regardless of discipline. So I'm running a module, for example, this term, which is for our creative faculty. So those are film students and creative artists. So they're helping them build some business skills is incredibly valuable. If I work purely with business school students, then very often their creative problem solving and other skills are a bit lower. So in this entrepreneurship portfolio, there's a mix of skills that are relevant to various different areas. The same with the sciences. So they typically both sciences benefits both from the creative problem solving, the lean startup methodology to test something quickly, but because typically they come in with a more robust, scientific, very methodic mindset, some of the more break the rules element of entrepreneurship is very beneficial to them. And that's not just the skills, but it's the mindset. So the idea that that you start to think out of the box, as we say in the UK, and that you start to leverage your own knowledge and yourself in a different way is highly relevant. So I think the mindset enhances not just not with a view that everybody will become an entrepreneur, but it ultimately also makes people much more employable, because when they go into organizations and they can think on how to improve things and how they can leverage themselves and others to improve things, that's what employers in any organization want. That's what people in government want as well. They also want to know how they can deliver services that create greater impact. Yeah, so I find it extremely relevant. It's strange that we've never found a better word than the very complex entrepreneurship term for this. But as a methodology, as a mindset, it's phenomenally impactful on transforming students.
And you did also mention something about shape disciplines, social
yes.
sciences, humanities, and all of this.
Yes.
And
so I mean, this is incredibly interesting at the moment, looking at the social sciences, humanities, arts, for people and the economy, because they have been completely neglected in the research commercialization process as well, and often just not seen as something that's valuable. But then, for example, we have case studies here. Oxford Carbon Consulting that was sold for nearly 800 million to PricewaterhouseCoopers, which a bunch of social science academics. Last week I was with a startup. I spent some time with a startup. It's called Darcy, and they are applying AI to music composition, and they've created this. They've created out of their research, working with some other technical colleagues, this wonderful AI that helps everybody with composing music. It's being used already in Abbey Road studios, with the top Hollywood studios, and it finds its way into gaming applications and so on. And so it's something that has very much come out of a corner where nobody ever thought there would. If you typically look at the university, you would not think that out of the music department something amazing will happen, but it happens. If we empower people, the most amazing things happen.
Well, hello. I was actually going to ask you to give us an example about how students of social sciences and humanities could be entrepreneurs, and you gave me an example. But this means that from now on, instead of focusing only on majoring in social humanities, English literature, social sciences, political sciences, we need other skills, interdisciplinary skills, especially now with the deep tech that you're talking about. So I think then we have to reconsider the curriculum
Yes.
And it should be more.
You need to embed it into the curriculum.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
I've had, when we did this research, I've had actually the head of the Shakespeare Research Center reach out to me and said, like, oh, what is this entrepreneurship stuff? Does it mean I have to send my colleagues round to the local concrete factory and they will walk around there and start their concrete? And no, but he already has got doctoral students, postdoctoral students who are contributing their knowledge to video games, to other areas, and creating virtual environments. So it's, yeah, there's so much opportunity, even in English literature, to do something.
Well, this is one of the things that I joined a training program in Germany related to promoting entrepreneurship skills and studies to social humanities. But the idea of entrepreneurship and provoking entrepreneurs and small businesses and startups started in a way because of COVID, right? So what I have noticed, and it's something like, I don't want to say that it's a global issue, but I've seen it in the Middle East, and specifically in Jordan because I'm from Jordan, that because of all these organizations that were calling for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial projects, we have seen lots and lots of startup businesses coming out. After 1 year, 90% fail. So I've seen in your presentation that there is, like every year, that was towards the end of your presentation, like every year we have like increase, right? Like 4,000 for entrepreneurship, like 4,000, right? Starting every year, but you didn't tell us about, you know, the other side, which is the failure of startups. And I would love to listen about this, because we don't want to give people like this optimistic visionary of what's going on. If you like go ahead and create your own business and stuff, but we need them to look into the reality, which is like 90% actually of startups fail. Thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm very, very much in favor of living in the reality and taking a very pragmatic view. And maybe to unpack what you said a bit, generally we look at on entrepreneurship as maybe opportunity-driven and necessity-driven entrepreneurship. So in terms of like, do you start a business because you think there is something that is worthwhile pursuing, but maybe you leave a job and really this is the better opportunity to pursue, or is it because you have no other option, maybe you can't find employment, and so on. So a lot of the pandemic-related ones where people may be sitting idle and not being able to do something, so we had maybe more in the latter camp, so that it wasn't, they might not have been viable businesses. But less maybe in terms of like focusing on the failure aspects straight away. Either way, people will have seen, and I think the value of entrepreneurship is this can-do attitude, to make people understand that if there is something, they can do something. They can take an action, they can start something, they can start to build something. Whether they all have the right skills to do it or not, or whether they are in the right place to do it, it's a different topic. But it's also teaching them that as an entrepreneur, it's less about you have to be the inventor, it's more about being a conductor, bringing people together, collaborating and creating something of value together. On the failure side of things, that's sort of like, especially when we teach the entrepreneurship modules and we try to, as a methodology, adopt this lean startup methodology, or what's called effectuation or effectual thinking. There it's about trying to test ideas quickly to figure out if this can work or not in the fastest way possible, with some real world evidence. And that's sort of where this experimentation mindset comes in, so that people are not spending a lot of time on a project that can never go anywhere, or they figure out what they should do in a rapid way. And that's, as a discipline, ultimately, that's probably the toolkit or the process that's the most valuable also to adopt across differences, rather than you spending a lot of time building something in your home that can never work and losing a lot of time. Have a way of figuring this out really quickly. But in the process, you learn that you can do things. So that's, I would take the value there.
Dr. Tariq?
Professor, thank you for your talk. I'm responsible for training in one of the colleges here in SQU, staff and student training. For the past couple of years, we have tried our hands at upskilling students, especially the final and pre-final year. So jobs, training, skills, in short modules. Now, we could, of course, embed this idea of entrepreneurship in our degree programs. But how effective do you think is if we have programs or upskilling, like let's say programs on the side, where the students could adopt or opt to take, depending on their aspirations or whatever what they want to do. Do you think that will be more effective than actually teaching them in a degree program or in modules?
That's a really interesting question, and of course I'm also here this week because we've launched Maharat at the university, which is about upskilling, sometimes getting digital credentials, digital skills, and so on. So I think we can't look at this as it's one or the other thing. It's both of the things. We need to give them both of those things, but more importantly also it's giving them the idea that they need to self-direct their learning, and if there is a project, they also need to self-direct their entrepreneurial projects. So the value of entrepreneurial projects in this respect also, again, is very strongly around teaching self-direction, self-activation, collaboration and teamwork skills, project management skills, and students who participate in these modules, they take a lot of transferable skills out of that, which they can then also make count towards their profile when they go out and look for jobs. So they take a lot of value out of this, but it wouldn't be enough in its own right. They still need to get all the other things. Yeah, but it makes them much stronger. And there's good research on this topic in the field as well, showing how entrepreneurship training makes graduates more employable. And certainly, anytime we sell this to our university, we highlight this much more than the aspect of everyone trying to become an entrepreneur. We know it's making everybody more employable, specifically on entrepreneurship.
My question is actually, hi.
Yeah, hi.
So it's a follow-up to the same discussion that you just said. So now you showed us the Masters in Entrepreneurship, which is a graduate level. So I was wondering, smaller programs like micro-credentials, like maybe creating a network, a platform for reskilling and upskilling. That is accessible all the time.
Yes.
And it depends on the level of competencies of people who are coming in, because they might really not need everything. They might need just specific skills, so they can just go to that specific skill that they need, or they might need someone to share an experience with. So that having that network is definitely very important.
Yes.
Those models that are successful that they can tap into and so forth. So I don't know if you have a very good example to share that within this regard for at the university level. It's more becoming professional learning rather than graduate level and academic. Thank you.
I think you're highlighting a very important point here, and I haven't spoken too much about the co-curricular and extracurricular stuff that's going on here at the university as well. So a key element, a soft element, for example, is the student society that we launched and then handed over to the students, which at some point was the largest society on campus in this area. And so they organize industry guest speakers and provide a network. But so what you were talking about here in terms of peer network, peer feedback, and so that's incredibly important. I've been fortunate enough to go with a startup through a tech accelerator program twice. So if you're not too familiar with those programs, they run over a period of time, and you're really there with other startup companies going through a process of rapidly speeding the development of your company and building the networks. But the most valuable out of those things was always the peer network with the other startup founders. So that is incredibly valuable. But yeah, it's as you say, how much is in giving something is great. So even if it's small, it's better than nothing. So the more, the better. If it can be tailored, absolutely. Lots of different needs.
Hello, and
Hello.
thank you very much for the insightful talk. I have two quick questions. The first one is about something you mentioned, sorry, as part of the applied entrepreneurship.
Yes.
You mentioned that you differentiate between realistic business ideas and moonshot ideas.
Mhm.
You also mentioned something about a lot of work in terms of practicing rational imagination. So I'm wondering, and this is my first question, I'm wondering, where do you draw the line between rational imagination and irrational imagination?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of exercises there. For example, one is we ask students to look at either the UK research councils or in the US at the National Science Foundation at what are the new inventions that are being published, and they need to take something that's grounded in reality or something that's sort of forthcoming, something that's been published at the university. So take something here and build it on a real scientific invention and then extrapolate and see how they can take this into business so that they don't come up with something that's completely ludicrous, but here is a piece of research that has not been commercialized yet. What could we do with it? So that is one of the exercises.
So eventually, is it the student who is going to decide whether this is rational and I can go on with it?
We have got then a couple of exercises which go into the other direction as well. It's also about briefing them, for example, how in the UK, in the US, venture capital is also financing these opportunities and what they are looking for and what sort of and giving them some case studies there. So it's explaining to them how this process works as well, because many students will already stop developing a business idea if they think, I don't have the capital for it, and they stop. So trying them to understand that if there is something valuable, how they can get it to a stage where it can get the investment it needs is almost the first step also, to make them understand things are possible, and this is how.
Do I have time for a second question?
Sure.
Of course.
Thank you. My second question is about increasing the engagement of academic
Yes.
Researchers and faculty. I find it also interesting that a lot of academics shun away from the field of entrepreneurship, especially when we know that as you mentioned, the reason is they dedicate more time for research. But as we all know that the methodology of research is actually very similar to the methodology of entrepreneurship activities, where they generate ideas, they plan, they try out things, they improve, and even selling. They do sell a lot of their own ideas in their papers and their research. So I'm wondering why that also the case, because I feel that there is a lot in common between the two. And also the other thing, we all know that major firms, major companies do have a lot of researchers within them. They do a lot of research that goes through also almost the same process of other mainstream research. So probably this is one of the areas where the two can meet and also make use of each other's expertise.
Thank you. That's a very good suggestion in terms of literature as well. I wouldn't necessarily say that the academics run away from it. The way I perceive it is that most academics don't have the time. They have got other objectives that they are already meeting, and it's still a very unusual, uncommon path. So they don't have role models in these areas. It's not something that one generally does. And although as academics we're always priding ourselves on our independent and critical thinking and that we're quite unique to some degree as a profession, we're maybe not that unique. Everybody still wants to advance in their career, so they do look what you do in this area, and more or less the academic path is what we know. So building the awareness, giving them the skills, and showing there's options. That's the way to do it. I don't buy too much into the academic researcher in the ivory tower that has got no connection with reality. I don't buy too much into this. Most of the colleagues I meet everywhere, they're very smart people. They know everything. I would say almost the opposite. Sometimes when I speak with people in industry, I find that they are far behind what people in the university are. We're generally very talented people, but it's a lack of support, a lack of time, and maybe a lack of role models that's stopping the prevention. And again, not every researcher or academic needs to do this. If we can just increase maybe the small amount of people that are currently doing it, if we could double that, it would already be phenomenal. And that would already make a big difference. Not everybody needs to do it. But if you can just take that small group and make it a bit easier for them, I think it would be already phenomenal.
Any more questions? Yes. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you so much.
inspiring, actually very interesting presentation, because I think SQ is also actually going that direction. It's adding entrepreneurship in almost every discipline. Thank you so much. I would like to invite you all to maybe have some snacks outside. Where are the snacks? Just outside this room. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.